at your CNBC News affiliate. We're the station that gets down to business.
Hi, this is Frank Stallone, and welcome to All Things P.I. with your host, Scott Ross.
Hi, good morning. We're back. It is Thursday, September 20th. I wanted to talk this morning about the upcoming sentencing of Bill Cosby coming in on Monday. You know, I've been reading a bunch of articles people have been writing and talk about whether or not he's going to prison. They talk about the motion that was recently filed by Kevin Steele asking to bring in these other 60 persons or 60 persons who are, what do they call them? They're accusers, but they're uncharged accusations, people that, you know, no complaints have ever been filed against Mr. Cosby for these people. One of the issues that I've always sort of been amazed by, some of these, again, reporters, and they claim to be seasoned reporters, have been writing stories about this tape and the alteration of tape and key evidence, and have sort of ignored the fact that when the judge set up the sentencing dates, he allowed for 2 days. So the sentencing, the actual conviction, was back in April, the end of April. So the conviction, at the conviction, he set the date for sentencing, and he set it for September 24th and September 25th. So he set 2 days. And when you set 2 days for sentencing, it doesn't take 2 days to be sentenced in any crime. I've been involved in multiple defendant cases. I've been involved in federal and state level cases where you have 10 to 15 people, and the sentencing, even in those cases, maybe takes 4 or 5 hours, but it just doesn't take 2 days. And especially when you're going to allow what are called victim impact statements. And the victim impact statements have always been reserved for the victims. And the victims in this particular case, it's typically a family member. It's the actual victim of the crime, if they're in fact still alive. If you have a homicide, something like that, the family members get to testify and how they've been affected by the loss of a loved one. But in this particular case, in theory, there should only be 2 people. So and I'm looking at the date, looks like on September 19th, Kevin Steele, the DA, filed a motion September 19th asking the judge permission to bring in these 60 people, to allow them to give out victim impact statements. And again, it seems to me, and I've been waiting for a reporter to put a story together on that clearly this has been preconceived. This was clearly pre-discussed. This was clearly prearranged, because again, it doesn't take 2 days to allow 2 people. That would probably be Andrea Constant and her mother to do the victim impact statements, but that's not going to take 2 days. So when you put in a request months after the fact, when 2 days have been set aside, seems to me like they've already prearranged to have these people come in. I'm looking through the motion. I'm trying to find out exactly what Kevin Steele referred to these people as. I'll find it sooner or later. And let's see if I can find it. But these are all people, again, these are the people that have appeared in numerous magazines, the New Yorker that did the stories on these alleged victims, that are all going to get up there and talk about what their allegations are. So, again, in sentencing, in theory, uncharged crimes of the Commonwealth, that's what he's calling it, uncharged crimes. And not only are they uncharged crimes, they're uncharged in any jurisdiction, and they really have nothing to do with the laws of Pennsylvania, and all laws are different. And so, you know, whatever the allegations were, whatever the consent was or wasn't, whatever the circumstances were, are not being taken into consideration. One of the things that I find really interesting, and years ago I had an accountant who was charged with a crime and said that anytime you read a report that the information is actually in the footnotes, and there's a footnote in this Kevin Steele filing, it says the court may consider prior bad act victims who testify at the first and second trial without need for additional evidence. They testified and under oath and were subject to cross-examination. So the short version is these are all people that are going to get up there and they're going to say whatever they want to say. They're clearly going to be attacking Mr. Cosby, and the bottom line is these people have never been subject to cross-examination. Some of them have been deposed. There were a series of civil suits, but some of them have been deposed, but none of them in this particular action. And I'm sort of at a loss to understand two things. Number one, why the court is able to do that. I assume there's some law that I am not familiar with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania that allows for it. And number two, I'm at a loss to understand why the media never bothered to pick up on that a long time ago. Instead, there were multiple articles written about a tape. The tape being basically the tape that started the whole thing, that Andrea Constand's mother contacted Cosby in 2004, recorded the conversation, and then turned that conversation over to the DA's office in Montgomery County. That DA at the time was Castor. The district attorney's name was Castor. And Castor is the one that made the offer to, or made the agreement with Mr. Cosby to allow him to be deposed in the civil matter against Constand. And yet that had made the deal in the arrangement that the deposition could not be used against him. It was a Fifth Amendment waiver, which again seems to have been thrown in the trash. The deal was thrown in the trash by Kevin Steele when Kevin Steele was elected. And of course, Kevin Steele's campaign, this is where we also had problems during the trial. Kevin Steele campaigned and ran against Castor for the DA of Montgomery County, and actually used Cosby and Constand in his commercials. He said that if he's elected as DA, he would actually prosecute Cosby and use that to get the public interested in nobody is above the law kind of thing. And yet, unfortunately, again, Mr. Cosby had already been deposed, and Mr. Cosby had already negotiated a deal, and his attorneys had already negotiated a good faith deal with Castor when he was the DA. So again, that brings up a whole separate issue. It brings up an issue of trust. And when the DA's office starts to negotiate with defendants, and people start taking deals and people start making arrangements, how do you know that's going to be upheld down the road? I mean, down the road, the reality is somebody can come along and change that at any given time. At what point does it become binding? At what point does the court have to support the district attorney, or at what point does the district attorney have to support themselves? So all of these issues should be brought out. They're probably not going to go anywhere. It also comes up. It also brings up a law in California that recently, or a case that was recently supported by the California Supreme Court, People v. Cunningham. And in Cunningham, essentially, it states that if the DA's office negotiates a deal and makes a deal with you, and then you put that deal in writing, or if the DA's office puts a deal in writing, you don't have to accept the deal. But if you go to trial, in theory, that's the maximum that you can be sentenced to. So in Cunningham, it was a sexual assault case. And I don't know a whole lot about the actual case itself, but I do know it was a sexual assault case, and the DA's office offered Cunningham 6 years. Cunningham turned down the deal, decided to go to trial for whatever reason. And again, I can't say whether he's guilty or not guilty, but he turned down the deal. He decided to go to trial and subsequently lost. And when he lost the deal, he was sentenced to 18 years. The Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court of the state of California upheld the deal, the arrangement, the initial arrangement of 6 years, saying that his Sixth Amendment rights were being violated, that when he negotiated the deal, that the government had assessed his punishment, saying that 6 years would be acceptable, and they were willing to accept it. But now that he's made them go through the work and made the county go through the money and the trial, the time in the trial of a case, that ultimately they wanted the 18 years. So under Cunningham, what most people are not aware of, that Mr. Cosby was offered 3 months of house arrest. He was offered a deal, to wear a bracelet, to do 3 months of house arrest, which essentially he's already done, having been convicted at the end of April, and it's now, pushing September. In theory, he should be sentenced to time served under Cunningham, but Cunningham, unfortunately, is a California law. It's not, it's not, how much time? It's not for Pennsylvania. And so that's probably not going to happen. Well, we'll be back. I'm hoping that attorney Gavin Richard is going to be joining us. You're listening to All Things P.I. You can text me any questions, 818-744-9827, and we'll be back in a second.
Talk Radio, KCAA, 1050 AM.
Are you having trouble sleeping? Are you always tired and worn out? Is it affecting your work and personal life? Well, South Pacific Sleep Lab can help you out. South Pacific Sleep Lab provides a personal study of your sleep patterns. With their trained specialists, they will diagnose your sleep habits and will give you a prognosis for getting a great relaxing night of sleep. South Pacific Sleep Lab has locations throughout Southern California, including Fontana, and will provide transportation to any of their locations at no cost to you. To find out more, give them a call at 844-SAD-5050. That's 844-SAD-5050. South Pacific Sleep Lab. Start resting easy and sleeping sound today.
Hi, my name is Phil Grandy, philsgang.com. Most people would love to be in the stock market, but they're scared not being in. They're scared about not getting out in time. Well, that is over, because now you can join Phil's Gang and my stock video program and follow me with specific stock on the video, and you will be out in time.
Find out more at philsgang.com or call 877-600-GANG. That's 877-600-4264. Why pay thousands of dollars for a weekend seminar when for only $39.95 a month, philsgang.com provides all the daily market investing information you need to make profits in the stock market. With over 40 years of investing experience, only Phil Grandy and the philsgang.com team provide daily live investing webinars, up-to-the-minute market updates, all the investing educational videos you can imagine. Don't hesitate to learn, invest, and make profits. Go to philsgang.com or call 877-600-GANG, 877-600-4264.
Bye-bye, sailor. No more sailing. Bye-bye, baby.
Okay, we're back. We were talking about Cunningham, but we have, unfortunately, limited time. So I've got Gavin Richard. Gavin is on the line with us. He's an attorney in Louisiana, apparently standing outside the courthouse. You near that puppy there, Gavin? Gavin, you there?
Oh, yes, I'm here. How you doing?
Good. I think you're too close to the woman who's angry and the puppy.
I'm actually outside the courthouse, yelling for a cigarette right now. Let me try and go somewhere a little closer and away.
Okay.
If it can help. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're fine. So one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about, you have a petition that you've filed to... Tell me about the petition. You filed it with the state of Pennsylvania.
Right.
Okay.
Well, yes. A friend of mine, or associate, her name is Mr. Cole from the Cole's View, which is on YouTube. She had been following the trial for a long time. She actually was at the trial for a couple of days, and she saw the unfair prejudice from the judge, from the news reporters that were there. She stated how a news reporter would always quote something the prosecutor would say, but when it was Tom Mesereau's turn to cross-examine, her pen would stop writing. And she was prepared to do something about the injustice that she saw, and she decided to come up with a website, we believe, BillCosby'sInnocent.com. She also had any other ideas, and she reached out to me, and I volunteered to help, and I helped draw up the petition that you see on the website, which is to investigate Judge O'Neill and the District Attorney Kevin Steele.
Investigate them or investigate their relationship?
Well, I didn't know about the relationship until I saw Mr. Mesereau on your radio program about the relationship between Judge Steele and the former prosecutor, former district attorney, Mr. Castor.
Yeah.
So that was one thing that I wasn't aware of. I knew that Mr. Mesro had filed a motion to accuse the judge previously because the judge's wife apparently gets money or has received money from some of the Me Too groups, which is a reason just based off the appearance of impropriety. The judge should have recused himself and stepped down, in my opinion.
And that's actually that's the objective word is the.
He was prejudiced.
Yeah, that's actually the objective word. It's the appearance of the impropriety. And what it is, too, is that as an attorney, as you know, that you can paper a judge, but it has to be done in more of a timely manner. And the issue is, I had a conversation this morning. One of the issues with papering this particular judge is that all of this was done with the prior attorney McMonigal. Now, they have their ability and their time in which to do this. And again, part of the problem is that, how many times have you walked into court and your client wants to do something different, and the court tells your client that they need to listen to their attorney. They need to listen to you, that you're the professional, you know what you're doing, and you're giving them advice. And so the bottom line, too, is if Mr. Cosby had leaned over to McMonigal and said, listen, I don't want this judge. We need to get a new judge. You can do that, at least in California. You can do it anytime you want. Well, that's not true. You can do it one time. You have one free pick. And I don't know what it is in Pennsylvania, but they could have papered the judge, and McMonigal didn't want to do it. And so now, unfortunately, Mr. Cosby, without having all of this information, and the other information that didn't come out in the motion and what's now surfacing, is the relationship between the tumultuous relationship between Judge O'Neill and Castor. That Castor and O'Neill ran against each other for the DA's position in 1998, I believe it was. Castor won. Go ahead.
Well, there's a little static, so I couldn't hear everything, but I'm just going to agree with what you're saying.
Okay. Well,
what's going on, too, an issue that I had as well that needs to be brought up is that during the trial, and you can confirm that I've read the news reports, that one of the district attorneys, assistant district attorneys, made a remark about having too many, we have enough blacks on the jury, if I'm not mistaken, during voir dire. That's another issue that I have that was made in front of the judge, that apparently he did not reprimand that attorney for that, and that actually could be what we call a Batson issue, because under the 14th Amendment, you have equal protection under the law, and you can't use race as a peremptory challenge to keep a person off the jury, or race, their skin color, their religion, those things are forbidden. And if those outbursts, that's just one of the outbursts. The other outburst was the witnesses who said, "You remember me, Mr. Cosby," or calling him a serial rapist. I just felt that was too prejudicial, and the judge should have immediately declared a mistrial, and he didn't do that.
Well, one of the other things that happened in closing, and yes, there were some conversations. I wasn't involved in jury selection. That's just it's not my thing. So I wasn't there during that time period. I was in Pennsylvania, but I wasn't in the courtroom. One of the things that is of interest during closing, Kristen Fetter, who was one of the deputy DAs who was doing the closing argument, vouched for Andrea Constand, saying that she could personally vouch for her credibility. That also is completely inappropriate. You're not allowed to do that because, again, this is an alleged victim in a crime. This is not somebody that you're friends with. You don't have a relationship, or you're not supposed to have a relationship with this person. You're representing the people of the state of Pennsylvania, or the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. You're not supposed to be representing one individual. And so when you sit there and vouch for this person's credibility, you have no idea, who they really are. You know them for a limited period of time. I keep getting text asking me, and we can both confirm this, about the appeal. Well, the appeal, unfortunately, the appeal process cannot begin until somebody has been sentenced. And right now, Mr. Cosby has not been sentenced to anything. He's out on bail. He's under house arrest. He's in his home in Elkins Park. He's not allowed to leave, except, I believe, for legal consultations or medical appointments. But until he's actually sentenced, the appeal doesn't begin. Part of the other issue is the changing of lawyers that he did. He eliminated, and one of the lawyers that he is no longer dealing with is Becky James. Becky James is an appellate attorney, and Becky was there during the entire trial. She did handled a few witnesses, but Becky's purpose of being there was for the appeal. That was her entire reason for being there. And by changing attorneys, I have serious.
My understanding is he can't do anything until that thing is unfortunately complete. However, as the things that we have talked about, from the outbursts of the witnesses, the remarks by the prosecutors, the actions of the judge, those are all reversible errors. And there is a possibility while he is sentenced that when his attorneys want to preserve the record and state that they plan to appeal, he could be still out on house arrest. I want to just state, too, a lot of people keep calling Mr. Cosby a serial rapist or that he was convicted of rape. What he was actually convicted of was sexual assault, basically inappropriate contact.
Correct.
Just like with Tupac Shakur, many people say Tupac was found guilty for raping a woman. No, he was actually found guilty on what's called oral sexual battery. And he even proclaimed his innocence and said he never did anything. And the people that were actually involved in the matter were his associates when he was in the other room. But because he was, Tupac Shakur, he was a big rapper, the city of New York cut deals with those men, if I'm not mistaken, and Tupac was the one that went to jail. So this whole thing, it just goes back to politics. That's another issue. This prosecutor campaigned on getting Bill Cosby, which is something I thought was highly inappropriate. You should not have done that because it pollutes the jury pool. And when you're stating someone is guilty and you're going to go after this person, you're basically using the office of the district attorney to handle a personal vendetta, which is something we never, ever are supposed to do. The justice system is not about revenge. It should not be that way.
Well, hang on, Gavin. Let me ask you.
I think we have a lot of sheep in the world and in this country where we don't read and do research. And if you look at the facts of the case and the information that is coming out slowly, and a lot of people, I think, are waking up, but you see that this whole thing was just a money hustle.
Hey, Gavin, let me ask you a more important question. When you negotiate a deal with somebody, so in other words, when Castor made the deal with Cosby and said, we're not going to charge you criminally, and allowed him to be deposed, and of course the federal judge down the road illegally released that should have fallen under fruits of the poisonous tree, but neither here nor there. What's your position on making a deal and then not adhering to the deal? It's the same office, whether it's a different attorney or not, but when they made the deal with Cosby and said, we're not going to prosecute you, go ahead and waive your Fifth Amendment privilege, go ahead and be deposed.
Well, that is another thing. He never waived his Fifth Amendment right. This prosecutor,
I disagree.
Had agreed not to prosecute.
I disagree, but I disagree by being
an email of some kind of a promise that he was not going to be prosecuted, and he wanted Andrea Constan to get money out of it because he didn't find that she would be credible in a court of law. And even at this trial, if I'm not mistaken, her credibility was shot as well, which is why they brought those 5 other accusers.
Well, I don't. Hang on.
The other thing too is that Mr. Cosby never admitted in his deposition, from what I read, of any wrongdoing or any guilt. He admitted having affairs with her, and he also said, when I read the unedited version, that she was also up and she actually, performed a sex act on him.
Okay.
But they leave that part out.
All right.
They say that in the media.
Okay. So, hang on.
Yeah.
But part of the issue is, too, you have to remember that part of the issue is, too, that this is a ruling that should have been set aside, but the judge ruled that we could only play partial excerpts or use partial excerpts from the deposition. And in fact, one of the concerns is that he said women, that Mr. Cosby, when asked a question, have you ever given drugs to women? He said women, and then subsequently changed that from women plural to woman singular. And again, that aspect was blown out of context by saying that. And in fact, in the jury statement, when they were interviewed after the fact, the jury said that he openly admitted to drugging women plural, and that's absolutely not what was said. He said that he had given drugs to a woman. Again, it was corrected. And that's part of the problem with depositions. You know, you get the physical deposition and you're allowed to change it, fix it, sign it, whatever. But that aspect didn't come in, and the judge, by limiting the amount that we could use instead of playing the entire thing. The other issue is that it was on videotape. So we tried to get the videotape used, tried to get a copy of it and tried to use that, and let Mr. Cosby, let them see Mr. Cosby's responses instead of having somebody just go ahead and read it. So Gavin, listen, we're going to have to take a break. If you need to go back into court, I appreciate your time, but we have to take a break again right now. If you have any questions, please text them to me at area 818-744-9827. I have a few questions that I'm going to get to when we come back from the break. You're listening to All Things P.I. Thanks for sticking with us.
NBC Talk Radio, KCAA 1050 AM.
Hi, my name is Phil Grandy, philsgang.com. Most people would love to be in the stock market, but they're scared not being in. They're scared about not getting out in time. Well, that is over, because now you can join Phil's Gang and my stock video program and follow me with specific stock on the video, and you will be out in time.
Find out more at philsgang.com or call 877-600-GANG. That's 877-600-4264. Why pay thousands of dollars for a weekend seminar when for only $39.95 a month, philsgang.com provides all the daily market investing information you need to make profits in the stock market. With over 40 years of investing experience, only Phil Grandy and the philsgang.com team provide daily live investing webinars, up-to-the-minute market updates, all the investing educational videos you can imagine. Don't hesitate to learn, invest, and make profits. Go to philsgang.com or call 877-600-GANG, 877-600-4264.
Are you having trouble sleeping? Are you always tired and worn out? Is it affecting your work and personal life? Well, South Pacific Sleep Lab can help you out. South Pacific Sleep Lab provides a personal study of your sleep patterns. With their trained specialists, they will diagnose your sleep habits and will give you a prognosis for getting a great relaxing night of sleep. South Pacific Sleep Lab has locations throughout Southern California, including Fontana, and will provide transportation to any of their locations at no cost to you. To find out more, give them a call at 844-SAD-5050. That's 844-SAD-5050. South Pacific Sleep Lab. Start resting easy and sleeping sound today.
Okay, so I'm getting an array of texts, and this one's kind of interesting. It says the DA seems to have carte blanche to find anyone to come in and pile on during the sentencing without having investigated a complaint. And that's actually true. And in fact, one of the things that sort of jumps out in my mind with Cosby is there was an allegation that I briefly worked on with attorney Harlan Braun, who's also been a guest on the show, that a sexual assault was committed here in Los Angeles, and that was investigated by LAPD and found to have no merit, and in fact, no filing on that case, which also goes back to one of the issues that with Bruce Castor, the prior DA, said. It wasn't that he felt that Cosby had no exposure to anything. He just felt that their case was weak, and he also felt that it was something that they couldn't prove, and was aware that the city of Los Angeles, or the county of Los Angeles, was investigating Cosby on other allegations, and that he would allow them to pick up, allow Los Angeles, us, to pick up the response and pick up the slack. But yeah, this is the problem. And again, this is also referring back to the footnote in Kevin Steele's, is that nobody's been questioned. All of these complaints that have never been investigated, all of these people surfacing after X amount of years. And again, nobody's going to go back and look into something that old. And again, yeah, that it gives the presumption of guilt, which means it also sort of forces the judge's hand that he's probably going to have to hook up Mr. Cosby. He's going to remand him, put him in lockup, simply based on how do you have 60 people come in there and say whatever they want to say, whatever their agenda is, and not hook him up. I mean, again, it's going to be a big, monstrous dog and pony show. 2 days have been set aside so people can come in and just complain at will. You know, Gloria Allred's going to be there. She has no standing. There's nothing that she can do. You know, that's her nonsense. This challenge for Mr. Cosby, put $100 million into escrow because she wants to try and sue him and get a piece of it. There's another question: can Cosby appeal at sentencing? Well, not at sentencing, but what you do is when you're sentenced, you file your motion to appeal. You're giving the court notice that you're going to be filing an appeal. But it doesn't bar the sentencing. And unless the judge wants to allow him to stay out pending sentencing or pending the appeal, the sheriff's department's going to hook him up right there on the spot and take him into custody. That creates a whole separate issue that, again, none of these, quote, reporters are talking about. That the state is now liable for not only his safety and his well-being. Part of the problem when people go into custody is people with money can be extorted. It happens all the time. And part of the issue is that when they put these people into custody, they can't just get up and go see their doctor. You have somebody who is sightless. You have somebody who is not born sightless, again, like Stevie Wonder. He can't sit there and read Braille. He's going to be put into what's called ADSEG, administrative segregation, for his own safety because, again, of the extortion potentials. He can't defend himself if he can't see what's happening. He's not in a position to sit there and read anything. You can hand him a book in Braille, but it's not as if he knows how to read Braille at this point. The other problem is that they are now responsible. The state of Pennsylvania is going to be responsible for his health issues. He's 81 years old. I don't know what his physical health is like. Never a conversation that I had with him nor would have with him. But part of the problem is that they're going to be responsible to take care of him. California was so poorly run, the medical, in 1996, that the California Department of Corrections medical unit was taken over by the federal government because they weren't giving people proper medical treatment. Susan Atkins of the Manson family and Charles Manson, both of whom died, still were entitled to get medical treatment. They made regular trips to and from the hospital. I believe Susan Atkins died of cancer, but Manson was in the hospital for several days. And again, the taxpayers have to pay for all of that. And it's the same thing with Mr. Cosby. When the Department of Corrections takes somebody to the hospital, they have a hospital detail, and they have at least 3 guards 24 hours a day. One of the cases that I don't often talk about, I did work on the Scott Peterson case. I worked on the civil aspect of the Scott Peterson case. And one of the reasons that the Rocha family had to dismiss the case is because the state of California wanted $300,000 up front to transport Scott Peterson down to from death row down to the proper county, Modesto County. And then they had to have state guards, 3 of them at a time, sitting on him. And the state of California wanted money up front. Well, the Rocha family had to dismiss the cause of action because they didn't have the $300,000. They're never going to get a dime out of him. And, but this is the same issue with Cosby. I'm being asked, what do I think the judge will sentence Mr. Cosby to? I think he's probably going to give him the minimum. He has no prior history. The reporters like to say, he's facing 10 years per count. Almost never, unless you have a very long history, which I guess arguably they can say that's what these people are coming in to say. Do you get allegations and get sentenced that run concurrent or consecutive, one after the other? So you do 10 years, then you do another, then you do another. They run concurrent so that all of the time is being counted together. I would say that he'll probably get the minimum. I don't know exactly what the minimum is, but I'd say no more than 3 years would be the sentencing. And again, different states have different, you don't always do the real time. If this is considered a nonviolent crime, it may be registerable, but it's not always a violent crime. Megan's Law is kind of an interesting dynamic. Everybody's heard of Megan's Law, and they have Megan Law registries. But not every sexual assault case where you have to register as an offender actually puts you on a Megan's Law computer. You can go in over the counter and you can look people up and determine if they're a registered sex offender, but it's not the same as going online on a Megan's Law search and running somebody to see if they're a registered sex offender. So I believe, personally, I think that Mr. Cosby, if the judge is going to sentence him to any real time, I don't think it would be more than 3 years. I think it would be 1 year per count. And again, the real time in California, if it's considered to be a violent crime, he would be doing 80%. If it was a nonviolent crime, he would be doing 50%, at least in California. Sorry, I keep getting texts. The other issue is where they're going to put him, because again, they have to, and again, California has a medical facility. In fact, that's where Manson was, up in Corcoran. There's actually a medical facility, and Vacaville, 2 prisons that have those, and they keep people there. They were trying to at one point set up a geriatric prison for people over a certain age. That didn't happen because of budgeting. But the same thing with Cosby. They're going to have him someplace where he's relatively close to a hospital, something that has medical attention, because again, you've got somebody who's 81 years old, and that's the same problem that the state of California has, that you're responsible for taking care of these people. So getting back to this other issue of Mrs. Cosby, then going to, there's an official statement that she wrote, and again, Mrs. Cosby trying to get the judicial board in the state of Pennsylvania to reverse this, and I just don't believe that it's even possible. I don't know what she was trying to accomplish by doing this. I think it's sort of curious that somebody would file a complaint against a judge prior to sentencing. It seems to me that he would be, you're kind of antagonizing the judge, and I think that so many of these issues, the peripheral issues, as far as the judge having an issue with Mr. Castor, with Bruce Castor, and their ongoing feud, I would think that would be an issue for the actual appeal. I've also just been asked if I think whether Mr. Cosby will be out pending the appeal. Again, in California, he would not. Typically, that's done more in federal cases than it is in state cases. Again, I have to admit, I just don't know the rules and the laws in Pennsylvania, but I find it very hard to believe that a judge would set aside 2 days and allow 60 people to come in and complain. And again, by allowing 60 people, I don't know that there aren't, again, peripheral witnesses. What we often call collateral damage. One of the people that testified, her husband was very vocal in saying that, his wife had to get out there and speak her mind, and talked about, to law enforcement, talked about the damages that his wife had suffered. And again, what prevents the judge from allowing him to come in and put in his 2 cents? So it isn't necessarily just limiting. I mean, again, I don't know that there's been any list that's been involved, that it's just specifically limiting it to just these alleged victims. It could be people connected to the alleged victims. I also got a text, somebody asking me about the 5 people that testified. Yeah, safe to assume that they'll be able to come in. Problem being is that they'll do the same thing they did on the stand. The one gal who sort of went after Cosby. And again, if you paid attention to the actual testimony, part of the problem that they had with theirs was the timing factor. They were incredible, simply based on saying that in 1982, I think it was, what's her name, Dickinson, was saying in 1982 that there she is, she's drugged and America's dad is on top of her, except the TV show wasn't released until 1984. So how are you thinking in 1982 that Mr. Cosby is qualified as America's dad for a show that doesn't even exist? And these are things that, unfortunately, the jurors opted to not pay attention to with respect to any credibility of the witnesses. And then, of course, somebody put together a statement for the juror saying that none of that was even taken into consideration. Again, same thing. I got a text from Nicole asking if Mr. Cosby will have to wait in jail pending the appeal. Again, I can't answer that. I think he will. Again, and I don't know what the laws are on that. I think the issue is that when you set that time aside, I just think the issue is that O'Neill, who clearly likes being on television, who clearly likes being in the news, I was sort of I thought it was curious when I would be at the courthouse. I would see him wandering the halls and constantly looking at the photographers. No cameras are allowed in the courtroom. I think that's a Pennsylvania law. But I would see O'Neill wandering the halls, looking at the photographers. There was a back door that he could come and go through his chambers. There were restrooms in the back. There was really no need for him to walk around outside amongst the and I'm not saying at any time, but it seemed like he did it quite a bit. That's just a personal observation. In Robert Blake's case, when it was televised, the judge in Robert Blake's case at the prelim that I did with Tom Mesereau was wearing makeup. I thought that was a little strange, but, he's got television cameras on him. And, of course, we always made a joke about Brian Oxman wearing makeup in Michael Jackson's case. All right, we have to take our third break. We will be back shortly again. If you have any calls, 818-744-9827. You can contact me by cell. Thank you.
NBC Talk Radio, KCAA 1050 AM.
Are you having trouble sleeping? Are you always tired and worn out? Is it affecting your work and personal life? Well, South Pacific Sleep Lab can help you out. South Pacific Sleep Lab provides a personal study of your sleep patterns. With their trained specialists, they will diagnose your sleep habits and will give you a prognosis for getting a great relaxing night of sleep. South Pacific Sleep Lab has locations throughout Southern California, including Fontana, and will provide transportation to any of their locations at no cost to you. To find out more, give them a call at 844-SAD-5050. That's 844-SAD-5050. South Pacific Sleep Lab. Start resting easy and sleeping sound today.
Hi, my name is Phil Grandy, philsgang.com. Most people would love to be in the stock market, but they're scared not being in. They're scared about not getting out in time. Well, that is over, because now you can join Phil's Gang and my stock video program and follow me with specific stock on the video, and you will be out in time.
Find out more at philsgang.com or call 877-600-GANG. That's 877-600-4264. Why pay thousands of dollars for a weekend seminar when for only $39.95 a month, philsgang.com provides all the daily market investing information you need to make profits in the stock market. With over 40 years of investing experience, only Phil Grandy and the philsgang.com team provide daily live investing webinars, up-to-the-minute market updates, all the investing educational videos you can imagine. Don't hesitate to learn, invest, and make profits. Go to philsgang.com or call 877-600-GANG, 877-600-4264.
Okay. Unfortunately, again, our time is limited here, but I also wanted to say that Saturday I am hoping to, with Nicole Lewis, I'm hoping to do a live YouTube thing. Nicole wanted to get into more detailed information about the sentencing. So you can look for that Saturday on YouTube. She'll put out all of the information on that. The whole thing about bringing in these people, again, I just don't understand. During the first trial, part of the issue was, and again, it's been put out there that the relationship between Castor and Steele, or I should say the contentious relationship between Castor, Steele, and Judge O'Neill, part of the issues being that they all ran against each other, they all knew each other. The other part being Brian McMonigal, who is a local attorney. The question is always going to remain, was it better to have a local attorney who was involved with these people, who knew these people, or is it more problematic? Because, in theory, if he knew all of these behind-the-scenes things with respect to Judge O'Neill's wife, getting funding from the YouTube movement, getting her, I believe, PhD on sexual assault for her teaching credentials. All of this was probably known. So again, why didn't McMonigal paper him? And the thing the problem that I have with it is, of course, Tom Mesereau is going to pay the price because he was the lead attorney who lost the case, and McMonigal gets to hide behind the hung jury. And again, by the time Tom tried to do that, file that motion, and again, who knows what information was available prior to that, the judge denied it, and he's going to continue to deny it, and he's going to keep denying it. And all of these motions, when you attack a judge, they get filed with that same judge. So it's almost as if the judge would have to actually physically come out and say, yeah, I did something wrong. And very few people are willing to actually do that. That being said, however, I do want to go back, although it was 9 years after the fact. We had David Rudolph on the show. for the Netflix version of The Staircase. And if you watch The Staircase, and I don't want to ruin it if you haven't, but at the end of it, the judge made some mistakes during the trial, and 9 years after the fact. And although Mike Peterson had to spend 11 years in prison, but 9 years after the fact, the judge openly admitted that he made mistakes. So I got a new question. If you didn't work on the case but followed it closely, what would you think of the charges? It's kind of an open question, I guess. It's for people who aren't there. And part of the problem is when you have the media, and this has been my complaint with the media from the get-go, they have reporters and they have people reporting on the media. Again, going back to one particular reporter who I've been told repeatedly not to mention by name, who did a story recently about this tape that was allegedly altered. And part of the problem is that this is a reel-to-reel tape. It's, for lack of a better term, it's a cassette. Could have been a micro cassette, could have been whatever. But if it's a reel-to-reel tape and it's been altered, that means it's been cut, it's been sliced. That means that there's a piece of tape. That means that you can physically see the alteration. And the fly in that ointment is that in 2004, Bruce Castor, the DA, would have used that aspect to come forward and say, we can't prosecute this case because one of the key pieces of evidence has been altered. And I don't believe that anybody would not do that if it had been altered. So the other issue is the tape was produced by Constand's mother, Gianna Constand, up in Canada. So if she had spliced it together or even taken a second recorder and taped it, stopped it, started it, and made another tape, you wouldn't physically see the splice. And again, the version that we ultimately received was an electronic version. So at some point, the DA's office took the cassette, booked it into evidence, and then hooked it up to a machine. They have specialists that do that. Hook it up to a machine, make an electronic version so that they can send it to us, so that they can preserve it. So when you come back after the fact and you say that again, this reporter indicated that something may have been altered on the tape, and that something may have been overheard by an official or somebody with Montgomery County. The problem that I have with that is if the alteration had actually been made, it would have been made in Canada. So how would somebody, if it's edited, cut, spliced, whatever it may have been, if it's in Canada, how would somebody in Montgomery County have been in a position to actually hear the part that had been edited out? And so, again, the reporter that reported on that, I think that was somewhat irresponsible to put that information out there. One of the things that I got as the investigator, one of the leads that we got, was that Andrea Constand was at the courthouse and that she was doing some research at the law library at the time that the election was going on, before Kevin Steele beat Bruce Castor, that she was there. She was meeting with Kevin Steele. She was working on commercials, whatever the case may be. But they said that she was spending day after day after day, that all this time that she was spending at the Montgomery County Law Library. And of course, my job as an investigator was to follow up and look into this. And one of the things that I did was I found out who was running the law library. And I was specifically given the name of an individual. And when I looked into that individual, it turned out that that individual had been terminated for grand theft and embezzlement from the law library 2 years before this. So again, clearly he wasn't there. When I found him, I tracked this person down, spoke to him in New Jersey. He was incredibly hostile and angry because his name had appeared in the paper. But the reality is that it didn't happen. And again, just because you're getting information doesn't mean that you can sort of willy-nilly go out and report that information. You actually have to verify it. And unfortunately, we have a series of reporters in a large story like this. Everybody is competing for internet space, and everybody is competing to get their story out there first. And this particular writer put this story together without contacting anybody. And more importantly, there was an indication in this story that there was something that we had done that was either inappropriate or something that we had done that was, I guess, incompetent. The actual legal term is called IAC, ineffective assistance of counsel, and that we had not done something. And again, the allegations, the thing that annoys me is everybody points the finger at the attorney. So everybody's pointing the finger at Tom. And my responsibility, my job, my function is to make sure that the attorneys have all of the information. And I've been doing it with Tom 4 into 20 years. And again, I know the information that needs to be developed, and I know how to develop it. And when somebody says that we didn't do our job and we did an ineffective assistance of counsel, and again, pointing the fingers at Tom, I take that personally. And I actually called the reporter and I said, you're absolutely wrong. And to sit there and report that, you know, their obligation is if somebody wants to tell them something, they can report whatever they want to report. But again, it doesn't necessarily make it true. And now, you know, this whole issue has come up about the tape. Okay, that's fine. If the tape was altered, I never did ask to inspect the tape. Part of the problem is that the tape had been previously allowed in evidence in the first trial. So for us to sit there and try and attack the tape in the second trial, when it's already been admitted, when it's already in evidence, and evidence that's used in the first trial in a situation where there's a hung jury and a second trial, all of that is still admissible. They can still use the same. They don't have to reestablish or reevaluate the evidence that's been put in there. And as long as that's been done, as long as the evidence has been cleared, for lack of a better term, by the judge, that means that they get to use it. So for us to go back and say, hey, we think the tape has been doctored, we want to see the tape, would just have been a complete waste of time. Now I'm getting phone calls and hearing rumors that they can't find the tape, that somebody went in search of the tape, and again, it would have been booked into property. There are property reports. There are property records that show when somebody has checked in or checked out a tape, or any property, anything that's booked in as evidence. So again, there's going to be a record of that. Again, I don't know if it's, again, somebody just fishing for another story. I don't know if it's a real story. I don't know if the tape is actually missing, but that's fine. You know, again, I don't think that we did anything wrong by not examining it, and I don't believe that it was altered, and it had to go through too many people. I get the adversary issue, but Detective Jim Reap and I had a pretty good rapport. I think he was very professional. I think he was a very nice man. I don't believe that Detective Reap would have jeopardized his pension. I don't believe that he would have done anything that would have created a problem for the case, for his own case. So I just have issue with all of these people, you know, these Monday morning quarterbacks and people writing stories about that. It's the same issue with Mrs. Cosby. I don't have a problem with what she's done. I don't disagree with her, but I just don't think that this is the avenue to go in and try and get the judicial board to reinvestigate, or to investigate, I should say, Judge O'Neill. You know, as Gavin Richard said, it's the appearance of impropriety. Now that in and of itself becomes very subjective, and it's, you know, one person's interpretation of the appearance versus another person's interpretation of the appearance. And the one issue that Mrs. Cosby cites is bias, and that there clearly was a bias. So again, he's not going to step down now. He's not going to walk away from it. If he would, I mean, think about it. If Judge O'Neill walked away now, he's basically admitting that there was a problem. Not going to happen. Right, wrong, or otherwise, it's not going to happen. If the Court of Appeals finds that there was a problem, well, you know, so be it. Then he'll be done, and that'll, you know, he'll walk away from that, and that'll be the end of it. But to go out and publicly go after him, yeah, I don't know how smart that is, especially when your husband is waiting to be sentenced by him. And again, he could have easily just done, you know, back to the Cunningham issue in California, he could have easily done a time served. Again, they had made an offer, if people don't know that, the DA's office had offered him a long time ago, and it was under Castor. I also have to say, I believe it was under Castor. I think I'm wrong. I think it was under Steele. They had offered him to take a deal, 3 months house arrest, and then become a registered sex offender. And of course, this is what Mr. Cosby did not want to do. Again, as far as all of these civil suits, there are a couple left standing. I don't know where they're at. That's being handled by the civil attorneys. And again, we're no longer involved in the case. So we're running out of time. If you have any suggestions or any other topics that anybody wants to talk about, next Thursday, I'm sure we'll still be talking about Cosby. It will be after the sentencing. We'll all be watching. I know I'll be watching. I'm very curious to see how this goes. I don't know that they have their equivalent of a Cunningham motion. But again, I think the fact that the offer was in writing should limit it. It's not going to happen. It's a clear violation, and the state of California has upheld that. It's not in California either, but it's a clear violation of a Sixth Amendment rights to a fair trial. So again, if you have any questions, you can email me at allthingsprivateye, spelled out, private, EYE, at gmail.com. You can send it to my personal email, scottross@hotmail.com. You can always call or text area 818-744-9827. I hope you have a great week. And again, any questions or any suggestions for next week, please feel free to give me a call.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, 106.5 FM, and now 102.3 FM.
This is a special report from NBC News Radio. I'm Lisa Carter. After getting a first-hand